A few years ago, I was watching 60 Minutes on Sunday night, and they had a segment on the Khan Academy. I was half listening to the broadcast while mulling over in my head what I was going to be teaching this week, and how I could somehow motivate my students to do better. I'm betting most teachers have had the same experience I have in my classroom, that during a class discussion, there's a handful of students who are totally engaged, another group that's somewhat interested, and way too many with their heads down or staring off into space. It's really fun and easy to teach those engaged kids, but how could I reach the kids who are less engaged? Then a statement from the show hit me. This flipped classroom approach means less passive lecturing and more interaction. A light bulb went off in my head. Maybe this could be the solution to that dilemma of having a handful of kids engaged while others are checking out. My students know that I can go on forever talking about Middle East politics or the latest government fiscal policies, and sometimes they'll encourage me to do it so they can get out of an assignment. I know that. But that's me being the sage on the stage. What if I took those lectures that always went too long and made them the homework and had the project done in the classroom, like the Khan Academy? By requiring students to watch the lectures at home, it allows for time to work on the inquiry together. That's why it's often referred to as the flipped classroom. And in case you need to hear it from someone much smarter than me, I don't blame you, here's what the experts are saying about the flipped classroom. They find that students have a greater self-perception of their own learning, that students prefer the flipped instruction because they feel like they're learning more through this approach. They feel like they have greater control over the pace and method in which they're learning. They've also identified that instructors find this being more positive because they see that their students seem to be getting more motivated and taking greater ownership and feel more comfortable asking questions. And of course, the most important thing is that students understand the curriculum. They seem to be able to be better at problem solving and reviewing lecture material. That the flipped classroom allows for student learning to become personalized as it allows students to choose methods that best match their preferred learning style. They're able to learn at their own pace, watching lectures when chosen, and at time, that was the most conducive for learning. And I want to say a huge thank you here to Amber Mazur from CBE who shared her research with me. In addition, the book Flip Your Classroom by Jonathan Bergman and Aaron Sams is an excellent tool that was recently shared with me. It's an easy read that outlines how to take this process and make it your own. I highly recommend getting a copy of it. Bergman and Sams point out many of the benefits, including the ability to better able differentiate for all of those increasing student needs. As was already stated, by directing attention away from the teacher and onto the learner, you can help the students feel more self-reliant, but it does take time. Flipping doesn't make your life easier, just different, and I believe more effective. Think about it. Do you often feel like you're working harder than the students? Why not have them working at least as hard as you are in a secure learning environment? So after pondering this over, I decided to give it a try. Couldn't hurt. I mean, how many projects gone wrong had I already suffered through marking because students misunderstood the assignment? My inspiration for the lecture videos was the Vlogbrothers. These videos are so entertaining, but I don't have the expertise to make something like this. I asked several experts in our division, and eventually we found a pretty easy solution using the technology I already had on my Mac laptop. I'll explain how to make the videos at the end of this, since there's probably a lot of you who already know how to do this or have access to different technology. That way you can skip the end of the video. Now, this whole process of video creation takes me on average 5 hours per video. I know, who has that kind of time? Some experts say you should work with others to create the videos because the startup time is so consuming, while others say it's better for you to create your own because it's your voice and style that students are used to and thus will be more engaged by the videos. I agree with the second opinion. However, if you don't have the time to create your own videos and lessons, then of course it would be better to work with someone else and get started on something. And while the setup time is pretty huge, in the end, it can be a time saver. Here's an example of how time is saved. For my Social 30 classes, we used to spend time at the end of the year doing review for the diploma exam. Now the students know they can access the videos for review, and then I hold one tutorial session right before the exam for anyone who wants further clarification. It was really rewarding to hear the kids tell a friend who was struggling with the philosophers to go back and watch video number 3, Self-Directed Learning in Action. In addition, students appreciate the flexibility that comes with watching videos. I have a student this year who's on the volleyball and basketball teams. Her mom remarked to me at parent-teacher interviews that her daughter really appreciated the ability to watch the videos between practices and having the time to work with her group partners in the classroom on the project instead of trying to squeeze it in on a Sunday night. Now, the key to this style of teaching is having an effective online presence. The website platform that I use, Weebly, is really easy to use and allows for your pages to look really professional. The Pro version allows you to require password access and student submission of their work. What I really love about my class website is that it's becoming a one-stop shop. It's a repository for anything I find that could be helpful. Before, I'd print off an interesting article or website and hope I'd remember to bring it up at a later class. Now I can pull it up with the class and discuss it, or encourage students to access it on their own time to help them with their understandings. This supports the idea of inquiry learning because I'm creating a safe place for students to start their research. In addition, my Weebly page links to a Facebook page where students are encouraged to post current events, and I love the fact that students who are no longer in my classroom continue to post interesting news articles to share with other students. How great is that to demonstrate lifelong learning and engagement? When a student misses a class, it's now their responsibility to find out what they missed and to try and get their work done as much as possible. My students quickly learn to not come to me at the beginning of class and ask, "Did I miss anything yesterday?" Because my response will always be, "Did you check the website?" Of course, if they did check the website and don't understand, I will clarify things for them. This helps with students who are going on vacation or out for extended illnesses. And I no longer use textbooks as part of my everyday practice. Those students who wish to use textbook questions for review still have access to them, but I only make them mandatory for those students who need some remedial help. This has freed up more time to actually discuss the topic at hand instead of going through the questions together, which meant some kids were getting some great instruction, but most of them were tuning out. One thing I worried about as I started to create these videos was the realization if I was going to condense a 40-minute lecture into a 10-minute video, I couldn't spend the time telling all those great stories I love to tell. But this actually became one of the highlights of the flipped classroom. I could still tell my stories, but I was telling them to small groups as I went around the room helping students with their projects. It was actually a lot more fun for me to have that one-on-one interaction as I tell them about the chair socks lady or how the Hunger Games has references to the dictatorial techniques of the Roman Empire. And I find that if there's a group of students who are struggling, we can get together and have a mini lecture for those who need it instead of the whole group. That idea of just-in-time instruction. My class now often starts with a quick review of last night's video or a quiz, which I usually hold 2 days after the video so students have time to come and ask any questions. Then, the students might be working the rest of the class on their inquiry project. I'm very transparent with this time, showing students my unit planning calendar and telling them the times that have been allotted for them to work on their projects. I put it on the board and tell the students to protect their time. If I'm going to go on and on about some current event or a case study, I tell them they need to remind me that this is their time and I shouldn't be taking it away from them. Of course, there is also time allotted for direct lectures or class discussions and debates. In fact, I purposely have some lessons that don't have any videos. These lessons are direct lectures. That's because by the middle of the semester, the students often tell me that they want a lecture. They're tired of the video format. I totally support taking a mixed approach. The last thing you want to do is the same thing over and over. Variety is the best way to approach teaching. And usually after a couple days, they start asking to go back to the videos. Now, don't let anyone tell you that inquiry learning or the flipped classroom is the cure-all for every classroom issue. It can be really tough to get those weaker students to buy in. Often in the first couple weeks, my honor students are consistently watching the videos at home and then reviewing them as they work on their projects. My average students are passively watching them, but my weaker students aren't bothering at all. But after the first few assignments start getting assessed, most of the students start to realize that the videos are a great resource and use them more often. Then that's one of my keys. Create an assignment that engages the student to seek out the information that's in the videos to help answer their inquiry questions. Yet, those students who struggle with being organized and self-reliant are the ones who really struggle with this style of classroom. The research I've done on the flipped classroom shows that this is common, as these students have often had their curriculum spoon-fed to them. Do this worksheet, write down these ideas. And now they're required to be more self-directed. Many of them say that they want the textbook questions and worksheets from me because it's easier and then I don't have to think. Yeah, that's my goal. Just memorize, don't think. But we do need to teach them how to learn. And this is where the learning support and communication with parents can be key. I find most parents to be really supportive of this classroom style, as they can see that their student who may have been struggling through school now has access to the key information at any time, and they can watch the videos to see what's being taught in the course. In fact, there are adults who tell me that they follow my videos because, as we often find, for most people, social studies is more interesting once you're an adult. I have to say that now I find teaching the way I used to actually a bit uncomfortable. I still have a couple classes where I haven't started the process, and I don't really like how much time it's spent with lectures and notes, waiting for the students to get things down before moving to the next slide. Ugh. Yes, the time pressure to get everything organized is high, but it's so worth it. Just remember, it's a process. I feel like I'm heading up a tall mountain and I've just scaled the base, but I'm determined to keep learning and trying new things. Just taking it one step at a time. It's not going to be perfect, but it's worth trying. Okay, so how I actually make my videos. This is going to be a little bit weird for me because I'm going to try and follow my screen capture. So as you can see here, what I'm doing is I'm just going into my old notes and opening up the PowerPoint. I then go to save it as a PDF, and turn it into an outline. So you can see here, I'm turning it into an outline and then going to PDF. And then what I'll do is I'll cut and paste that outline into a Word document. Then I start writing my script, and I try and make it as personable as possible. I try and pretend that somebody's in the room because it makes it a lot more engaging. Now this whole process can take me about an hour because as I'm writing my script, I'm also fact checking. Every once in a while I can find out that my information's a little bit too old, and so I have to make sure that my facts in fact are correct. Once I'm done writing my script, I'll then create a checking for understanding site or questions. Basically what that is I'm going through to make sure that my script has in fact covered all of the basics that I need to cover. And this is really important because there's been a couple times where I didn't do this before I started creating the script, and it ended up that there were key points that were missing in the video and I had to go back and kind of fix the video. I also use this as a review tool, and I also use it as a way to write my quizzes. Once the script is done, then I start to actually create the PowerPoint, which is essentially finding images to go with the text. Lately the copyright rules have changed, so it's actually pretty easy now for teachers. As long as you're using it for education, you just need to cite the source somewhere on your website. So what I've learned is I will build the whole slide, and I'll try and put a few different images on there. And then in order to make it look animated, I'll actually cut and paste each slide, deleting one element from it. And that way it actually looks like it's animated. And you'll see that here in a second. The other thing you can see me adding here is my text. I try to minimize how much text I have on there. I just try and reinforce some key ideas with the text. So you can see here I'm just taking the different pieces of text. I also try and make them match so that you can see. Here's my bibliography. It's pretty basic. All I'm really doing is just citing the URL, and then I put that at the end of the video. So here you can see a finished slide, and then you can see me cutting and pasting each slide, and then I just remove one piece of it until I get back down to the base where I want to be. Then when you play it back again, it'll actually look like the video's animated. So once the whole PowerPoint's done, I'll read through it one more time with the script to make sure everything's okay, and then I'll save it as pictures, which is nice because then it makes a nice little folder for you, and then I'll import that in iPhoto. And you can see here in iPhoto what I do is every time I make a video, I actually create a separate folder. That way if I want to go back and find a picture, it's pretty easy for me to find in iPhoto. Then it's time to go into iMovie, and you might notice here that this is an older version of iMovie. I find that I actually prefer the really old version. This is kind of the 2011 version, and I find the newest version to be hard to work with. It could probably save me time if I took the time to learn how to work it, but at this time I don't have time. So you can see here all that I'm doing is then the iPhoto automatically imports into iMovie. And I've set it up so that there's automatic transitions, that there's an automatic crossover. That just makes it a lot easier. And then I add these little page markers at the very beginning and the end. And I always make them the same color so that students can identify that this is where the checking for understandings is. You can see here the very, very last slide is my citation list. And I make that slide a duration of just like a second or two. It's really quickly. If somebody wants to check something, they can press the pause button. And then I insert the checking for understanding. And I do include the answer key because I do want students to be able to check themselves. And obviously I don't make my quizzes exactly the same as the checking for understanding. And then it's time for me to actually record. And so you can see here that I just press the record button, and it's kind of weird me talking about it as I'm actually doing it. And then you just try and do it in smaller clips. That way if you do make a mistake, you can go back and you can fix it. And probably what is the most time-consuming thing for me is making sure that my text, my speech, is matching really nicely with the images themselves. I'm very fiddly and very particular about making sure that my timing is working the way that I want it to. And so that can be really, really time-consuming to do that. Now, just a couple hints here. A lot of you probably have the headphones that came with an iPhone with a little speaker in them. That works pretty well to kind of avoid the echo that can come from just using the speaker that's in your computer. And also, the first couple of videos I tried to speak really slowly and clearly, but it ended up sounding like a nagging mom. So now I actually speak pretty quickly. And if you see me doing the voiceovers, I look a little crazy because I'm sitting up and I'm talking as if somebody's actually in the room, including using hand gestures because I normally talk a lot with my hands. In iMovie, there's a few things to watch for. Sometimes the Ken Burns effect can get to be a little bit too much movement, so you have to check that Ken Burns effect that's in there. Um, it can also be important to kind of watch the timing of the transitions. A lot of times I'll use a different transition, like the book page turning, in order to kind of identify that something's changing, but then I also slow that down so that the timing of that is a little bit slower. Now, for a lot of things like what I'm doing right here, screen capture software can actually make a lot of sense. And for example, if you're doing a math problem or something like that, you don't have to do this voiceover. You can do it all at the same time. I haven't actually used it for a class video yet, but I'm planning on creating a video to help students with their essay writing, and I'm probably going to do a lot more of that screen capture there. So once I'm happy with the editing in the video, then I'll go and save it as an iTunes file. Because that makes it really easy to upload to YouTube. Now, before I upload it to YouTube, I'll wait for it to actually create that iTunes file, and then I'll watch it one more time just to make sure that it is in fact okay. Because sometimes when it's transferring either to the iTunes file or into the YouTube file, it just gets really kind of fuzzy, and so then I'll end up uploading it again because it's really hard to read the text. So then you just upload it to YouTube, which is pretty easy. And when I'm uploading it to YouTube, I'll put a couple tags in for searching just to help the kids. But what I really try and make sure to do is have playlists. And that way the students don't have to search too much. In fact, some of my students have said they prefer to have the playlists versus the having to go through the website to actually access it. Now you can see here I'm going to advanced setting and I'm turning the comments off. This is important. I actually forgot to turn the comments off once, and the vulgar comments that were being posted by total strangers was absolutely crazy. Now, one teacher's actually recommended to keep it on that you can set it that you have to approve the comments first. So that could actually be a really good way to actually have like a discussion with your class on the video itself. One other thing I want to eventually do with YouTube, I saw it last year and I still haven't had time to look at it, is there actually is a way to embed a quiz into a YouTube video, which I think is pretty cool, that it'll actually stop the video at that point and the kids have to write the quiz before they can move on in the rest of the video. So even though I try to make sure my videos are always under 10 minutes, I say you can handle 10 minutes of homework, if maybe every couple of minutes there's a quiz to make them pause for a second, that might really help to reinforce the key ideas. So once the video is finished uploading, which usually takes about 10 to 15 minutes, I'll watch it yet again one more time just to make sure that it came out okay. And then it's time for me to post it on the class website. So I'll walk you through the process here just to show you how easy Weebly is. It's just so user-friendly. I have paid for the pro version, which isn't very expensive, but even the basic version definitely makes it easy. You essentially really just drag and drop the different things you want to do. Now, if you do have students that have access to internet issues, you may want to, for example, burn your videos to a DVD or to a memory stick just to try and minimize that digital divide for your students. Something else that I'm going to really start working on is teaching students how to watch the videos more effectively, to not just passively sit there, but to actually, figure out different techniques that work best for them of how to take the notes, that sort of a thing. So you see here, all I do is I highlight the section that I want the link to be, put the URL in, save it, and publish it. It's really that easy to do. And then once it's been published, what I'll actually do is I'll get out of my builder website and actually go into the site that the students see to make sure that I've actually published it correctly. There actually have been a couple incidences where I haven't done that. And so I want to make sure that the students have access. Otherwise, they get a little frustrated with me because they tried to do their homework and weren't able to do it. And then usually the last thing I'll do is I'll throw it into that playlist because, like I said, some students actually prefer to have access to the playlists instead of having to go through the website. They'll just click on the playlist and know which video is next. So that's about it. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me, and good luck on your adventure on flipping your classroom.